This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Kevin Jeffries. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors in Riverside County. I want to tell you a quick anecdote. I recently interviewed Hilda Solis. As you know, she was Secretary of Labor for the United States of America. She voluntarily chose to come home to run for a seat on the Board of Supervisors in Los Angeles County.
Yes.
That tells me what I always knew. Board of Supervisors, great positions in politics. Am I right? And I say that with love and support. What is she saying that you now see?
Look, it's a great position to be in because you have the ability to govern.
Explain.
Well, you have to understand that I spent 6 years in the state legislature in the minority party,
right.
and during the toughest times in recent memory as far as budgets go. And now I'm allowed to come home, stay home. I don't have to fly every week.
You look great.
And the opportunity to actually govern and make decisions and make improvements to the communities and the people who live there is just an incredible level of satisfaction.
Is that because there are only 5 of you? Is that because it's such a large county, you cover a large area? Is that because you have a lot of unincorporated areas in your district? What's the reason?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all the above. The first district that I represent covers about 65% of the city of Riverside, give or take, and then it shoots down through Lake Matthews, Woodcrest, Temescal Canyon, Lake Elsinore, Canyon Lake, Wildomar.
Beautiful communities.
And then back up in the countryside behind Wildomar and Murrieta, Temecula up in the mountain range. So we have a lot of diverse, very interesting communities, from very wealthy communities, very municipal type settings, to really heavy-duty poverty in the Good Hope and Mead Valley areas outside of Paris, where service levels are deplorable, and we're really trying to turn those around too. So we cover everything under the sun, the county and the unincorporated areas, fire, police, sheriff services, flood control, roads, you name it. In the cities pretty much handle, of course, the day-to-day services, but we deal with things like the county jails and mental health services and probation.
I want to talk about the county jails momentarily, but first I want to dig deeper into the types of services you are requested to provide. So often we're so focused on city, or Sacramento or Washington, yet, counties in our state really wield a tremendous amount of power, and I don't say that pejoratively. I mean, there's just a lot there that the counties are mandated to do.
Right, and that's it. Counties, like cities, counties are political subdivisions of the state. I mean, we exist because the state created us.
But it seems as if counties are more like, it's not equal, that the counties have more of a connection to the state than the cities do.
It's true. We're sort of the first line when you start delegating down from the state, from Sacramento or the feds. The counties are sort of the service delivery level. If a community incorporates, then they take on additional responsibilities beyond or above what the county did. So a lot of the responsibility, the legal authority and responsibility, is vested in the counties. When a city incorporates, they assume a good chunk of it, but certainly not all of it in the case of jails and others.
Healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you think about the Affordable Care Act, most of that money is flowing through the counties.
Yes.
It's not flowing through the city of Riverside. It's flowing through the county of Riverside.
Yeah, we have over 18,000 employees in the county system. And a large number of them are funded by state mandated and federal mandated programs, and that's why those employees are there.
So when you do interact with constituents and they are asking for something that is in your bailiwick, what is your bailiwick? I mean, what is it that you are providing them?
Yeah, well, and you really take that, honestly, it sounds funny, but you really take this on a street-by-street, community-by-community basis, depending on where they live and what the challenge is that they're calling you about. It could be anything from, why isn't my street paved in the unincorporated areas, to I need help. My son has been incarcerated in the county jail, and we think it's unfair or not getting proper health care or something like that. Anything under the sun is coming through our office.
Let's talk about the jails, because if we were speaking 5 years ago and you were on the Board of Supervisors, jails really would not be on your radar. But because of what we know as realignment, and you lived it on both sides of the state assembly and now on the county, the counties have a lot more responsibility facility dealing with the incarcerated.
Yes.
It is low-level offenders that are supposed to be incarcerated at the county facilities. Again, whether you like realignment or not,
Right.
it's here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you got the Supreme Court, demanding the state decrease its prison population, and
Right.
for better or for worse, that's what Governor Brown chose to do, is to realign literally.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how it's impacting Riverside County as an example of, a nice sized county of the 58 counties we have.
Yeah, and there were two major mistakes were made.
Okay.
First started with the state of California stopped building prisons while our population increased, and of course, therefore, the number of prisoners need someplace
Can
to...
I stop you there? Because
Sure.
I do think that's a very interesting issue. Over the last decade or two, there was this whole push that we don't want to spend as much money on prisons as we
Right.
do on education. And, for a while we were spending more on prisons. And that feels right, intuitively, I'm sure, for you as well. But we did see, as the voters are passing propositions, increasing sentences,
Right.
you have no more prisons being
Right.
built. Where are we on that? And I want to kind of break it down, prisons and then county.
Well, and the county did the same. The county followed the same mistake. The county stopped building jail capacity. And so you had the state at capacity, you had the county at capacity. The county was already into federal mandated early releases.
Riverside specifically.
And then realignment hit, and we took a bad situation in Riverside County and made it worse. Where now I think, and don't hold me exactly to the numbers, but I think we released something like 10,000 individuals within the last 12 months.
And on the construction front, as I understand it, I think you may have been in the legislature in 2007, about $7.5 billion was set aside for construction, but Governor Brown has reduced that amount, and we just aren't spending the money that we can be spending. We did open, I guess, a facility in Stockton, a medical facility. Governor Brown is looking to increase prison construction, but where do we go on this?
No, we cannot depend on the state to fix our problem now because they've handed it off to us. So Riverside County is dedicating significant financial resources to building extra jail capacity throughout Riverside County, starting right now in the Coachella Valley. The problem is every new dollar that comes into the county from increased property taxes, sales taxes, whatever it is, every new dollar is going to be set aside to pay for the cost to build and operate those new jails. And that
we're not getting enough from the state.
We're not getting near enough from the state. It was bait and switch.
Even
and that's another story.
Yeah, even with Prop 30's constitutional mandate, that the counties get enough from the state?
We are so grossly underfunded for our responsibilities that have been handed to us by the state of California. And a lot of people, this sounds like an excuse, and it's truly not. It is an explanation of a very tough scenario that has been handed to all the counties.
So you had a second point. So there's the prison construction issue. What was the second point that you wanted to bring up?
Well, I mean, it really comes back to the county's responsibility now to build the jails and the financial impact that's going to have on us going forward. If the county had... And it's easy to Monday morning quarterback this. If the county had started increasing its jail capacity 10 years ago as population was increasing, not only in the state, but in Riverside County alone, and we're at 2.3 million people now. We haven't built nearly enough bed space to keep up with the population growth. So now it's all dumped in our laps. Right now, fix it, or watch crime rates start to rise.
Although, interestingly, we have seen crime decrease somewhat. It's hard to know why. You would have thought that they would have increased during the recession. New technology, better policing, hard to know. So, we're now 2-3 years into this. Are counties starting to get it? Meaning, are they starting to figure out how to make this work, or is the learning curve still steep?
Oh, I think it's still pretty steep. And then, again, like everything else about government, it comes down to money and how well you spend it and how effectively you can use it. And that's the biggest challenge for Riverside County is we've dramatically cut our code enforcement, animal control services. Fire had eliminated something like 250 some positions in county fire alone.
And there's
the sheriff was dramatic.
And we're not seeing restorations.
Not to the levels that are keeping up with the demands and the population growth.
His name is Kevin Jeffries. He is a member of the Board of Supervisors in beautiful Riverside County. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.
After Los Angeles County, which California county has the largest population? Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, or San Diego? San Diego County boasts the most residents after Los Angeles County at over 3.1 million residents.
This is California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Paul Zellerbach. He is the district attorney for Riverside County. And so I want to speak with you about an issue that has come to the fore as a result of the efforts of many district attorneys, including yourself, as well as Kamala Harris, our Attorney General.
Correct.
A few months back, a bunch of you, if I can say, had this grand press conference.
We did.
To talk about truancy.
Correct.
How has truancy risen to the level of DAs and AGs?
Well, let me start with the fact that 70% of our state prison population right now don't have a high school diploma. And I think that fact alone is very telling. So it tells us basically if we can keep our kids in school and at least get them through high school with that diploma, they will be much more successful and less apt to get involved in criminal conduct or behavior.
And what do we know today about truancy in California? To me, the statistics were startling.
They are startling. Unfortunately, California has a very high truancy rate, and Riverside County is above the state average in that regard.
What was also startling, sir, is the truancy epidemic is not junior high and high school, but it is also primary school, elementary school.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where you have to start teaching the good behavior of keeping kids in school at the elementary school level.
So talk to us about the task force, about what you're doing, about what your colleagues are doing to try to combat the scourge of truancy.
Well, first of all, it's an economic factor
Oh, that's
because
true.
just in the last year that we have statistics for, which is 2011,
Right.
in that year alone, Riverside County lost $112 million due to kids not being in school. So that's a big problem to begin with. But then you add the fact that different districts and different schools define truancy differently. And we need to have a consistent definition, and we need to all utilize best practices as far as what we can do to keep our youth in class.
What are the strategies that you have learned improve attendance? What have you found?
It has to be a collaborative effort. And what we have in Riverside County is we have regional, what we call youth accountability teams. And those are teams of prosecutors, school resource officers, probation officers, and school district personnel that all get together and focus on kids that are habitually truant. And once they identify those children, they then meet with the students, they meet with the family, they find out what the reasons are and what the problems are, because oftentimes the problems relate to the home.
And
So,
let's do talk about that, because I think that some of us may forget that oftentimes truancy is really a societal problem of economic despair, that families, one child gets sick, the parent has to stay home, they can't take the other child to school. There are no childcare options. Sure, are there lazy parents? Absolutely, but it's not that easy.
it's not that simple or that
Right.
easy. Matter of fact, what we found is 75% of the kids that go through this youth accountability team process come from single parent homes. 75%.
And it's often homes of color.
Correct.
And so that brings up a whole host of issues. I recently heard of a study out of Los Angeles County where there was this, you can play with statistics, but the suggestion is that truancy laws against parents, because as you know now parents can be prosecuted,
Correct.
were being disproportionately applied to communities of color. It begs the question, do you cook the statistics? But it does bring up a valid issue.
It does bring up a valid issue and concern, and that's why I would much rather address the issues at the home rather than prosecute
Right.
the parents or the kid for not going to school.
So what are you learning when you do address the issues in the home?
If we can focus on those students that aren't going to class and empower them, get them interested, and it's an 18-month program.
Oh, really?
It's an intensive supervision program where we continually reach out to the parents on a regular basis as well as the students, and we more closely monitor them, we empower them, we make them feel good about coming to school and attending classes, and it's been a very successful program. We have over a 95% success rate.
Which means?
That the students that go through the program, the Youth Accountability Team program, graduate successfully from whatever level of school that they're at.
So do you feel as if with the increased attention by Attorney General Harris, by your office, by your colleague's office, that we're going to start to truly combat the challenges that we face as a result of truancy?
I can tell you this,
Please.
that just in the last 2 years in Riverside County, we have reduced juvenile crime prosecutions 35%.
So that says something.
So I think we are doing a good job at this, and we're being successful.
I want to shift gears, if I may, and speak with you about the recent tragedy at UC Santa Barbara. Could have been UCR.
Could have been anywhere.
Could have been anywhere. And so I want to get your sense as a DA, as a district attorney, about the challenges that law enforcement faces prior to an incident like this. Because as you know, the individual, the perpetrator, 3 encounters with law enforcement, not DAs.
Right.
But still, you're all a team.
True.
You're all a team. And so talk to us about the challenges that you face and how you combat those challenges.
Well, just look at our diverse society that we're facing these days. We expect a lot more from law enforcement, not only from prosecutors, but also from street level law enforcement.
Right.
They have to be psychologists, sociologists, parents sometimes.
Is that fair? Is that really fair to them?
I don't know if it's fair or not, but it's a reality nonetheless.
But should it be, I don't know staffing levels, but when you have a welfare check, not a welfare check because the elderly grandparent hasn't called in, but a parent who says, my college-age son is exhibiting bizarre behavior. Can you check on him? I'm 300 miles away. We know that happened.
Correct.
Should we not have a psychologist on staff to go with the police officers? Because look, police officers, they're not psychologists. I don't care how much training you give them. They're not psychologists.
They're not, even though they undergo some of that type of training and education.
And I'm not criticizing the
they're just not
officers.
prepared to deal
Right.
with some of those types of situations or issues. But the bottom line is resources,
Right.
money.
Because we know, sir, from this manifesto, this gentleman was a master manipulator.
He
It's
was.
undeniable. And while I do believe that police officers have the ability to see through what,
To a certain extent.
to a certain extent, but still, I gotta think a psychologist would have a little more sense, or maybe not, I don't know, but you know where I'm going.
I do, but this individual had been seeing numerous
Well stated.
psychologists as well that hadn't stepped up and done maybe what they could have or should have
Right.
done either.
It's hard to know. At the same time, is there a role for the DA's office, a DA's office, in a situation like this? This is all pre-tragedy. I mean, or is it just without?
We have our family justice centers throughout Riverside County that deal with all types of family violence situations, and they're open all day, every day.
Sure.
And we can get restraining orders through our family justice centers as well. We have the resources to do that. So that is one area or avenue that people can seek help or assistance in.
I do want to get your sense of one issue. And again, it's very easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. So easy. And I don't want to be that. But we do know one thing. What we do know is that the perpetrator of the act had bought at least 3 guns legally.
Correct.
A legal purchase. Whether that should have been allowed, that's another conversation.
Right.
We do know that law enforcement did have the ability to determine whether this individual owned guns prior to the welfare check.
Correct.
And we know that they did not. They didn't run a background check to see that he owned guns. Is that something that should start to become standard procedure, that if you're going on a welfare check, look to see if they have legal ownership of guns?
You know, that's...
I know it's Monday morning, but still.
It's Monday morning. There's a lot of issues about privacy and how far is the government going to check into someone's background.
But
when
that's
it comes
public
to
information.
And it is. And when you come to the issue of possessing firearms, I think the governmental entity has a good reason to go there to look into those areas.
I mean, at a minimum, for the officer's safety.
Well, for everyone's safety.
But if all of a sudden 6 or 7 officers are going to appear at a door, which is what happened in Santa Barbara, it'd be nice to know for the officers whether that person legally owns guns.
Well, and they do that, though. There's a quick...
But in this instance, we know they didn't.
Correct.
It's tricky. Again, I don't want a Monday morning quarterback, but it's worthy of conversation. His name is Paul Zellerbach. He is the DA for Riverside County. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.
Thank you.
In 2011-12, what percentage of elementary school children in California were classified as truant? 8, 14, 20 or 34%. 1 in 5 elementary school students in California were deemed truant during the 2011-12 school year.
Welcome back. It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are now joined by Kimberly Drake. She is a professor at Scripps College in writing, but she has taken her love and expertise in writing to a level one would never anticipate. And it's actually quite inspiring to hear what you have done over the last few years. Talk to us about a program known as Crossroads before you tell us the punchline. Tell us about Crossroads.
So Crossroads is a transitional facility for women who are on parole from one of the California prisons. There's a program that can last for 3 to 6 months. They will be getting group counseling, they will be doing individual counseling, they will have job training.
Sure.
They have a lot of volunteers like myself that go in and help them with various things. They have a garden. They have volunteers come and help them with that.
So it's a halfway house,
yes,
to use the vernacular,
yes,
if I may say.
Mm-hmm.
And these women tend to have been in prison for what reason?
Typically it's drugs, or
Right.
it is violence toward a significant other who was abusive.
And so there's no doubt there's a lot of raw emotion within these women. They are on the other side of their sentence, so there's probably a lot of joy, excitement, fear, anxiety, and you've decided to channel that with them and for them in an incredibly unique way. Tell us about it.
So I was asked by one of the advisory board members of Crossroads to lead a writing workshop on women cooking with stingers in prison. And a stinger
Yes.
is a immersion heater. It is used to boil water. So women in prisons have been cooking using these in their cells for decades.
Explain exactly what a stinger
Okay,
looks like, because
so-
in a lot of ways it's a metaphor,
Right.
to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's typically it's 2 spoons. There's an extension cord. One cuts the cord off, strips the wires, attaches them to the spoons, puts a wooden object in between them so that it won't blow up, tapes this, sometimes puts a Bic pen cap with a little hanging thing down so that you can hang it on the edge of a bucket.
Got it.
And then you just put it in water and plug it in, and it will boil the water eventually.
It doesn't cause electrocution or whatever it may be.
I'm sure that's happening.
Never mind.
Yes.
And so these women will then get various food items from?
Catalogs they can order. They have a canteen where they can go buy things on the spot. And then sometimes they will smuggle things out of the dining hall, which there's some stories in there about that.
And that's what ultimately was the result of your work with these women. This book called Stinging for Their Suppers, How Women in Prisons Nourish Their Bodies and Souls.
Yes, there's a picture of a stinger there.
There is. And I don't know, I was very compelled by it. And I would love for you to give me a sense of what they learned through this process, some of the stories from this book, and what you think it helped, how it nourished their souls.
Well, I think the main message that you get from reading this book is that they are human beings like anyone else. They're diverse people. They have many different experiences, very different backgrounds, but they come together in this really difficult space of prison, and they nourish each other and they nourish themselves. And one way to do that is by cooking and not going to the dining commons where you have to wait in a long line and you don't get enough time to eat and you don't really get enough food or the quality of food that you might be used to. So they just go into their cells and cook for each other. And sometimes they'll have big parties. Holidays are big. They have Super Bowl parties. They have Thanksgiving. They have Christmas.
And
birthdays.
this, is the prison kind of turning a blind eye to this behavior?
I think to some extent, yes. It
because
is.
one could argue that there could be a risk of engaging in this type of activity in terms of the electricity and all.
Well, they finally allowed them to have commercially made stingers that they can order from catalogs, and you can get them yourself for
Okay.
$7.
Okay.
And that they can buy food in the catalogs or the ingredients of food so that they could make coffee or something. That's perfectly fine for them to make
Right.
a little, like a coffee or tea using a stinger. And it's just when it gets a little bit more elaborate that problems can happen.
So this book includes recipes, but there are stories behind the recipes. If you can, I know these are all your children, metaphorically speaking, but give us a couple of stories that really jumped out at you.
Well, I think one of them that I've often read to other people is by Jackie White. She's actually working at Crossroads now and has been for many years.
But a client at one point.
Yes, her story begins on my 7th trip to prison. I finally decided that I was going to stay out of the mix. I was going to stop getting into trouble. I was going to stop participating in the drama. And part of how she did so was by cooking potato soup, which was made out of potato chips. And she said, you know, they have lockers. So she said, you'd look in your locker at the end of the month and you'd see these, like a crushed up bag of potatoes chips. And what could you do with those? Well, you could take creamer that you saved from your coffee and mix it with some other random things, and you can make potato soup. And then she talks about how it saved her so many times from getting into the kind of trouble that would keep her there longer.
What do you think the process of participating in this project, how did it benefit these women? The fact that their work is now published, but also that they put pen to paper.
It's interesting. When they first show up in the workshop, sometimes they don't seem as interested. And often I've said, oh, do you want, can we edit your story? Can we edit it after you leave here? And they'd say, whatever. They're not trying to be professional writers. But after they work together and they produce a story and then the whole group does a workshop of that story, I've seen them become very excited and feel really proud of what they produced. And that's really gratifying to see people say, I'm a writer at the end of, a few months of working on writing. And they are. They're amazing storytellers, and all it takes is really for them to put the stories on paper.
Are they scared to write?
I think some of them are. Some of them are. I mean, one of them told me, I have a learning disability, I can't write, and she's writing.
Right.
And she's very happy and proud that she's writing.
So this book was released a couple of years ago, is that right?
2013.
Okay, so just last year. You're already ready for your second one.
Yes.
This one, well, this no doubt is powerful. The next one will cause your friends, your clients to dig even deeper.
Yeah.
And it's called Transformations.
Yes.
Tell us about Transformations.
So that's just an idea. Sister Terry and I were talking, what's the next book going to be? What's the next book going to be? And finally we came up with this idea, and it was based on the fact that some of the women had sung in a choir at Scripps for this really big project called True Witness that had professional singers from different places in the world come. And Crossroads had a choir. And they talked about being transformed by the experience of being on stage and singing beautifully. Singing a song about freedom, which was everybody was crying,
Yeah.
And I thought, that's it. That's the title. That's the concept. And so I went in immediately. Actually, my first visit back was Valentine's Day.
Oh, great. Okay.
And they gave me a little bit of fudge that they had
which
made.
is wonderful.
And we wrote about food. And I did some warm-ups, and then we wrote about some experience that they felt had transformed them, and just got some
For better,
beautiful.
for worse?
Both. It could be whatever they wanted. I think most of them talked about a little worse and then better. Was the way that they were.
Anyone you can reveal that touched you?
Well, actually, one by Marlisa, where she talked about the experience of getting out of prison and her nieces and nephews and brother picking her up, and her mother didn't know she was coming, and sort of driving down, Highway 5 or whatever it was, 101, and feeling like she was being transformed as she was talking to her niece and nephew about the stories and sort of telling them how it had been. And she said she felt like things were sort of falling off of her. She was kind of coming out of a shell, and then walking up to her front door and seeing her mother through the open doorway like she had been waiting on me. That's a quote. And we worked on that story. We workshopped it line by line. And at the end, she just said, I'm so excited by this story. And I told her, this story is going to make people cry. It's going to be in a book. People are going to read it. They're going to know you. And
where can we get these books?
That is on Lulu.
Okay.
You can go on the internet and type in lulu.com, and then you type in Stinging for Our Suppers, and anyone can get this. It's $15.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you.
I'm happy to do it.
Her name is Kimberly Drake, a professor at Scripps College. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.